Hi, I'm Jim Paxon. Tonight on Arizona Wildlife Views, you'll see bald eagles getting a new home along the Salt River, bighorn sheep taking the ride of their life, and even a real live fish story. All that and more on Arizona Wildlife Views.
Arizona Wildlife Views is brought to you by the sale of hunting and fishing licenses and the Heritage Fund, lottery dollars working for wildlife. Some projects made possible by the Sportfish and Wildlife Restoration Fund.
Good evening and welcome to Arizona Wildlife Views. We begin our show tonight with a story of a unique construction project that gave a pair of bald eagles a brand new home.
Up in a tall cottonwood tree along the banks of the Salt River, the seemingly unthinkable is about to happen.
Here it goes.
A huge bald eagle nest is purposely sent crashing to the ground. But to understand why the destruction of this nest was necessary for the survival of future eagles, you need to understand some of the history about what it takes to be a bald eagle living in the American Southwest. Bald eagles are more than just our national symbol. They are a testament to what it means to be a survivor. After being nearly wiped out by the ravages of DDT in the middle of the 20th century, bald eagles began to thrive again in North America, even in one of the harshest environments there is, the Arizona desert.
But that's what makes them unique. They've adapted the Sonoran Desert ecosystem in these riverine type habitats. And for me, you know, there are a lot of eagles throughout various parts of the country and Alaska and all, but they just handle themselves differently.
Bald eagles in Arizona face a myriad of challenges to survive and breed successfully. But no one imagined that a tiny bug living in a nesting tree would prove to be a deadly threat.
Yeah, today was a little bit of a new story for us. We had a nest where the nestlings in the last 2 years have all died from exposure to ticks. This last year when we were in the nest to ban the nestlings, we actually found where those ticks were laying eggs and growing their young.
Arizona game and fish biologists, along with other cooperating partners of the bald eagle management team, came back to this nest after the breeding season was over and the eagles were gone to treat the tick-infested branch. In order to reach the area with the bugs, Tuck has to climb the 40-foot cottonwood all the way to the nest. This is something he will do time and again as they work to save future nestlings. Since this is the first time they've encountered a problem like this, it truly became a case of necessity being the mother of invention. Using products that have been approved for use around birds, the biologists send a variety of items, one at a time, up the big cottonwood to Tuck. He is going to try several methods to kill the ticks that include spraying, tenting the nest for fumigation, and squirting foam filler into the diseased branch. But will it work?
The success of today's work will really show next year, next May, when the young of the year are ready to fledge. So we've got a little bit of a waiting to find out if this was successful.
Arizona has 66 bald eagle breeding areas today, compared to a low of only 11 just 30 years ago. So every active nest is important to the recovery effort. Bald eagle management falls under the careful watch of Arizona Game and Fish and a coalition of 24 other partners, along with financial support from the Heritage Fund. Seven months have passed since the tree and nest were fumigated for ticks. In that time, the adult eagles have returned and successfully hatched 3 chicks. Now that the nestlings are about 6 weeks old, the biologists are back to put leg bands on the birds, something they do with all of the nests they can reach.
The difficult part of the whole banding project is getting to the nest itself. The eagles, unfortunately, don't pick the most accessible of locations. So we've got to assess each and every nest individually to find out if the tree's alive enough for us to get into the nest safely, or if the cliff is accessible enough for us to be able to rappel into it.
Meanwhile, back at the problem nest, Tuck makes his way to the 3 nestlings, who have to wonder what is going on, if nestlings in fact wonder about those kinds of things. The parents stay nearby, vocalizing their displeasure with this intruder in their midst. He carefully grabs each nestling, puts a hood over its eyes to calm it down, and booties over its talons, and places them in a special bag so they can be lowered to the team waiting on the ground. It will be 5 years before the young eagles develop their distinctive white head and tail feathers. At 6 weeks old, they simply look like gray and black balls of fluff.
We take a lot of measurements. We have to determine their sex. We have to determine their health, and we actually have to band them. So we put on these leg bands, basically like bracelets, and we put them around their legs, and they're fitted for an adult, so they'll stay on for the rest of their lives.
The bands that we put on these eagles don't cause a detriment to the birds. We do have to enter a nest and cause a disturbance for a couple hours, but that disturbance doesn't result in a failure. And that couple of hours of disturbance results in a lifetime of data that we're able to collect on these bald eagles.
These nestlings get an extra close examination for any ticks or parasites that may have survived the fumigation attempt and made their way onto the young birds. So far, so good.
I looked at them. They looked pretty good. I didn't find any ticks on them. They all looked pretty healthy. They were fat and happy, kind of, so to speak. They had a lot of food in them, and right on target for weight. So overall, looking pretty good. We spray. It's an over-the-counter bird spray, so it's safe for the birds. And yeah, the purpose is to help combat any ticks or other parasites that are on the birds.
While the birds are out of the nest, Tuck has his first chance to look around and see if he can find any surviving ticks. Once the banding is complete, the birds are put back in their bag and returned to the nest. As soon as they are safely back in, the team leaves quickly so the adult eagles can begin caring for the nestlings as soon as possible. While they didn't find any ticks on the young birds, they did find a few still in the tree, so they are cautiously optimistic these nestlings will make it. Unfortunately, that optimism didn't last very long.
At 6 weeks old, we banded these birds and everything looked good as far as the nestlings went. However, we did find a few ticks still living on the branch, so we were a little concerned about how that was going to turn out. About 3 weeks later, 2 of the nestlings ended up on the ground, and we took them into Liberty Wildlife. They were infested with ticks again this year. So as a result of that, we went ahead and climbed the nest and grabbed the 3rd nestling from the nest so we could go ahead and treat him for the tick infestation before he got any worse.
This is the 3rd chick from the orm nest. She was the 3rd one to come in. We had 2 others come in as well, and they have been coming in for the last 3 years in a row with a tick infestation. Most of the time it's been fatal. She's been the only one that's survived so far.
As the medical team at Liberty Wildlife works to keep number 3 alive, they are pleased with the progress this stoic little bird is making.
She's looking good, actually. We're pretty thrilled with the fact that she's now standing. She couldn't stand when she came in. We actually spent, with the times that they've all come in, usually they've died within, hours of arriving or a day or 2 later. And the paralysis tends to affect everything. It seems to just kind of go up their body. They start with limb paralysis, and then pretty soon the respiratory system seems to be affected, and they start having trouble breathing. And the best way to treat them is by picking the ticks off.
Even if number 3 recovers from her ordeal, there is still only a small window of opportunity to return her to the wild. She obviously can't be put back in her own nest, so they need to find another nest that still has 1 chick in it and try to foster her into that nest. But the time has almost run out for this year's nesting season. The biologists have been battling this tick-infested nest for 3 years, and finally they have some good news.
So today was our first chance since these ticks showed up to actually successfully save one of these nestlings and get it back out into the wild. What we did is once it got a clean bill of health, we found another nest with one other nestling and climbed up, put it in the nest tree, and got out of there real quick. And now the adult bald eagles are perched in the tree and checking out their new young.
As eagle biologists like to point out, eagles can't count. So when an adult leaves their nest with one chick in it and comes back to find two, it just feeds them both. So the bald eagle foster parent program is usually very successful. After just a few short weeks of parental care, number 3 fledges from the foster nest to begin the life she was meant to live. But what will happen with the infected nest during the next breeding season? Eagles generally return to the same nest year after year, unaware of any danger their chicks might be facing.
The parents have used that same nest for over a decade now, so they're going to continue using that nest unless something changes. So we're going to have to figure out a way to either get the parents to move or to clean the nest itself.
The difficult decision was made to make the parents move. This will be the first time in Arizona an active bald eagle nest is going to be intentionally removed. So Tuck gears up for one last ascent up the cottonwood to the nest. Since none of the biologists have removed an eagle nest before, they are hoping some basic tools will allow them to pry it out of the tree.
I'm going to drop this rope. What I need is a piece of that baling wire, decent sized, and the jack, the truck jack.
It doesn't take long before the wood plank, baling wire, truck jack, and shake the branch as hard as you can nest removal tactics do the job. As the huge nest lies in ruins on the ground, we pick up our story from where we began. Everyone on the team is amazed at its sheer size. The best the biologists can figure is that the 20-year-old nest weighed over a ton. The rest of the team loads the remains of the massive nest into a truck, where it is hauled far away from the breeding area and burned.
I've been climbing that nest for 10 years now, so once that nest came down, it was really weird being in that tree and not having that huge nest right in front of me. Definitely a different feeling, definitely a new beginning for this breeding area.
Only 2 months have passed since the tick-infested nest was removed, and like so many things associated with this nest, radical measures are being taken to ensure these eagles don't remain homeless.
Building the artificial nest, we had our partners at Liberty Wildlife built a real solid platform to get us started. Oftentimes it's that first stick is the hardest one to get to stay. So we had a little bit of help up front, but once we got that base put into the tree, we added additional nests to build it up so it looked more like an eagle nest. But of course we're not as good at building nests as eagles, so we just kind of got it started and let the adult bald eagles finish the job for us.
Bald eagles build their nests in large trees that offer them an expansive view of what's going on around their nest. They also need to be close to a food source, in this case, the Salt River.
With that in mind, we picked a spot as close as possible to their old nest. With that, we know that they're able to find enough resources in this area to be able to feed their young every year.
But even with their best efforts, there is no guarantee that the eagles will use the nest, which would be a shame. The pair began breeding in this area in 2001. And before the ticks started killing their nestlings, they had successfully raised and fledged 15 young, a feat accomplished by only 2 other breeding areas in the state during the same time period. After several anxious weeks, the biologists see that the eagles have not only found the man-made nest, but they appear to be exhibiting nesting behavior. Before too long, that behavior results in the hatching of 2 baby eagles.
So today we're out here kind of for a mid-season checkup. We wanted to look at the nestlings, make sure they look alive and healthy, make sure there's ticks didn't somehow get into this other tree. Gave us a chance to go ahead and band the nestlings, as well as just kind of give it that mid-season update, make sure everything looks well. At this point, everything looks good. We've got another couple of months before these birds are flying on their own, and we get to celebrate our first successful breeding attempt at this site in 4 years.
The celebration began about a month later, when the 2 young eagles, 1 male and 1 female, successfully took their first flights from the nest. Just 3 decades ago, the bald eagle was disappearing from Arizona's skies. But 2012 was a banner year for bald eagle breeding success in our state. At least 80 eggs were laid, 54 breeding areas were occupied, and 52 nestlings fledged. The success is due in no small part to the countless hours put in by dedicated biologists and volunteers who help these magnificent birds overcome obstacles both large and small to survive.
As the sunlight begins to pierce the early morning sky over Canyon Lake, a small militia of wildlife biologists, handlers, and pilots prepares to capture and relocate 30 desert bighorn sheep.
Today we're capturing sheep as part of a transplant effort to move sheep from these healthy sheep populations in units 22 and 24B to 37B in the Mineral Mountain Range, where we've been doing a transplant operation since 2003 to get a viable population in that mountain range.
Bighorn sheep live and thrive on Rocky Canyon slopes. They can easily scale the side of a mountain in places where you or I couldn't get a toehold. So the only practical way to safely capture them is with a net gun from a helicopter.
The helicopter goes up and locates a herd of sheep, and the net gunner kind of sits on the edge of the seat, hangs out at the side a little bit, and they try to get one of the sheep out and away from the herd enough to fire the net gun, and that net should go out and kind of tangle up that sheep. And then they'll drop down low enough that the third member of the crew can exit the helicopter, run around and get on that sheep, secure the sheep.
The net gunning process has a lot of moving parts. In this operation, the helicopters are flying low and slow over steep, rugged terrain. Since safety is always the #1 priority, the experience of the crews is critical.
We work really closely with our pilot, and the net gunners we have in the department have actually net gunning for quite a while, and the pilots that we use are very experienced as well. And so we work pretty good together without even communicating a lot verbally. I can tell by the way he's flying the ship where he's going to go, and he can tell by the way the animals are running where I'm going to make my shot, because we've both done it for such a long time. You'll see in some of the videos potentially that we'll be chasing animals for what seems like a long time, but what we're actually trying to do is single out a specific animal. When you net an animal, you have to be really careful, because the nets are 10 by 10 or 12 by 12 squares, but on each corner is a pretty heavy weight, and you want to be careful so that this weight doesn't hit one of the other animals in the herd. Once we see that the animal is caught up in the net and what we think is not going to get away, because every once in a while they just roll out of the net and off they go, we actually have a third person in the helicopter who we call the mugger.
The mugger's first goal is to subdue the animal by getting it down on the ground and covering its eyes with a blindfold. Once the sheep can't see what's going on around it, they generally calm down. Sometimes, though, even a blindfold doesn't subdue the sheep completely. These animals have such a strong flight instinct that the mugger might occasionally be taken for a short ride. In this case, right through a patch of cholla cactus. But generally, the captures go very smoothly, so once the sheep is hobbled, it's ready for transport. If there's a safe place to land near the capture site, the sheep is loaded directly into the helicopter. If the pilot can't land in a suitable location, then the sheep is placed in a specially designed bag and tethered underneath the helicopter for the short flight to the staging area. This staging area is set up in the parking lot next to Canyon Lake. Here, dozens of game and fish personnel and volunteers take over the handling of the sheep. In this carefully orchestrated process, the sheep is untangled from the net, then the wildlife health team begins tending to any injuries that may have occurred during the capture process.
The other thing we're doing is we're collecting biological samples such as blood, and we're going to test for antibodies to diseases that bighorn sheep get, especially the pneumonia diseases. The other thing we're doing is we're collecting swab from the nasal passages, and we're going to save those back and culture them if it looks like any of the antibody tests are positive. The sheep are coming in nice and cool, and they look very healthy. They're looking really great.
After the test samples have been collected, the sheep are given some immunizations and vitamins, and they each receive an ear tag for identification. 10 of these sheep will receive real-time GPS tracking collars so the biologists can monitor the sheep's comings and goings on a daily basis. While all of this is going on, another group untangles and repacks the nets so the helicopter crews can keep moving.
We wouldn't have been able to do this without a lot of help from the Arizona Desert Bighorn Sheep Society. They've put in a lot of volunteer man-hours and funding to help us with these relocation projects and get us the collars, the tracking collars. And we've just this year gotten data that's showing that this project is really taking hold and working. It's one of those things that for a while you hope and you hope and you hope, and then this year we finally saw that data that these sheep are really taking hold.
Okay, drop.
Once the sheep are processed, they're placed in travel boxes for the last leg of their journey. This time to the Mineral Mountains near Florence. This location was identified in 2000 by Arizona Game and Fish as prime sheep habitat, and this is the third translocation of bighorn into the area.
It's important to reestablish these populations. The sheep in and of themselves have an intrinsic value. They're an important animal to our ecosystem. They're an animal that creates a lot of attention. They're very charismatic. People really enjoy seeing them. I have a lot of recreationists in my district that I hear about all the time how they got to see these sheep when they were in Box Canyon or wherever, and they just love that. This will be the last transplant for this project. It'll mean we've moved 90, or actually 100 sheep. And I think this last transplant is really going to help kick them, up that extra notch where they're going to be healthy and out there for generations to come, which is it's been really exciting for me to get in at, pretty close to the beginning of it and see it really start to take hold. So I'm excited about that.
When he's not on the road, he's often outdoors with family. Truck driver Roman Rodriguez shares his fish story at Silver Bell Lake in Tucson.
We might get a little rain here, but we need it. Today we're fishing for catfish. Me and my uncle Richard here. We drive all across the country, deliver freight. We get to see a lot of nice country, and we put in sometimes over 3,000 miles a week. We both own our trucks, so it's a lot we deal with maintenance and stuff like that. It can, get you, when is it ever going to end with all this maintenance costs and everything? But, we all come out here, forget about it, come out here, relax, throw our poles in the water. If we don't catch anything, It's all good, just about having a good time, relaxing. Some people go and get massages and do therapy, all this stuff. This is what we do. So we didn't really go on vacations. My dad took us hunting, guys hunting. That was our vacation, you know. We don't need the video games, the TV or nothing. Just take us out there and talk around the fire and go out and hunt. You know, the same thing when we fish. Sometimes we're out here at night, bringing the lanterns, or we'll cook out and stuff and just have a good time. You know, home's just right there, so we could stay out here, you know, pretty late into the night. And now I got this, you know, I love to hunt and fish. They see what I do for a living, forever trucking. Fishing, hunting, going shooting, four-wheeling, anything outside, I love it. Family and, you know, coming together for stuff like this is what it's all about to me.
Well, that's our show for tonight. If you'd like more information, check out our website at azgfd.gov. For all the fine folks at Arizona Game and Fish, I'm Jim Paxon. We'll see you next time.